What's the most amount of money that you ever made in a single year with your mail order pharmacies?
10 to 15 million.
What's the most amount of money that you've ever made in a single year?
Let's say more than $1 million and less than 100.
What's the most amount of money that you've ever made in a single year working in the commercial space?
1.8 million rand.
Most amount of money you've ever made in a single year with your shoe store?
Shit, like 180K.
What's the most amount of money you've ever made in a single year with your construction and cleaning company?
Couple of $1 million.
Today we're in Miami at the Miami Design District, and we're gonna be asking millionaires how they got rich. Let's get it. If you could go back to your son's age and give yourself any piece of advice, what advice would you give yourself?
Don't trust the internet and work hard.
I love it. And what industry did you ultimately pursue a career in?
Healthcare.
What's the most amount of money that you ever made in a single year with your mail order pharmacies?
10 to 15 million.
That's incredible. What's the best money lesson that you ever received that you want to give to the younger generation?
Like I said, work hard. What you want to happen will happen.
If you could go back to when you were 20 years old and give any piece of advice to yourself, what would you tell yourself and why?
Take 10% of your paycheck and save it. That way you don't go broke.
That's good advice. I think a lot of people need to follow that, and I think a lot of people don't follow it because they love buying things. So what industry did you decide to pursue a career in, and how did you know that that was the right industry to go into?
Well, early in my career, I started out in real estate investment and development. It was a family business. My father was an immigrant builder who had taken surplus capital and started to invest in real estate. And so my brothers and I took over that business when he passed. And it was just in my blood. So, my advice to anybody who's going to college is learn about real estate, because even if you choose another industry, you're going to be making renting decisions or home purchasing decisions, and you should understand a little bit about property. And, one of the most fundamental things you can do is put a roof over your head. So real estate is an interesting area that I think everybody should learn about, but not necessarily choose as a profession unless they're passionate about it. I ultimately became an investor, and I work with Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary, who you might know from Shark Tank. He and I are business partners, and we run a venture business together. And what I like about venture capital and entrepreneurship is you're constantly learning about new things. People are always at home trying to solve problems, figure out how to make things work better, create a better mousetrap. Super interesting. So, I've been in business over, 35 years, but I'm still learning every day.
Hi, quick question for you. What do you do for a living?
I own companies,
What type of companies do you own?
construction and cleaning companies.
Construction and cleaning. What's the most amount of money you've ever made in a single year with your construction and cleaning company?
Couple of $1 million.
Couple of million. Above 8 or 9?
No.
I love the car, man. Thank you. Have a great day. Take care. Yo, that's so sick, dude. Hey, how's it going, man? What do you do for a living?
We have a tobacco distribution company.
How'd you get into that?
It's a family business. My dad started the company, and then I took over.
That's incredible. What's the most amount of money that you've ever made in a single year with a tobacco distribution company?
Above 6 figures.
That's great. Awesome. Would you advise people to get into that same industry? Do you think it's a good industry to pursue?
I would say get into any industry that you're passionate about.
If you could go back to when you were 20 years old and give yourself any piece of advice, what advice would you give?
Know the value of time. Make sure time is something that you will never get back.
What's worth more, time or money?
Time, 100%, any day.
Marry rich.
The money.
Give me a high five. That's the best piece of advice we've gotten all day. What's the best money lesson that you ever received in your life?
Well, I would say saving is important, but always invest at a very young age.
Know the value of compounding. If you're young, value of compounding. That's something that you remember. Warren Buffett was not a billionaire until he was 60 or 65, if I'm corrected. The reason he's a billionaire is because he started investing so early in life.
If you could go back to when you were 20 years old and give yourself any piece of advice, what advice would you give to yourself?
Trust God and be humble and understand that it's a gift. I'll always be blessed if I follow Him, seek Him, and give Him the credit. I feel like I'm nothing special, but God has been good to me.
So what industry did you ultimately pursue a career in, and how did you know that that was the industry for you?
Real estate development. I feel like God put a vision and a thought in my mind, and it always stuck with me. And I said I'm gonna believe that.
If you could go back to when you were 20 years old and give yourself any piece of advice, what advice would you give to yourself and why?
Number one piece of advice would be spend less time worrying about outcomes, worrying about making good decisions about what to do. It's pretty hard to really figure out life until you live it. And if the most important thing is to not worry too much and be honest with yourself. If you're unhappy with the way things are going, make a change and stop trying to predict the future because it's impossible.
So what industry did you ultimately pursue a career in? And then how did you know that industry was right for you?
When I got out of school, I thought I wanted to go into investment and be a venture capitalist. So I started working at a firm, and in those days, most of the people that were good at it, who I respected, had started companies. So when I was 23, I started my first company. I've founded, I think, 7 or so since then, depending on how you count it, and that worked out for me. What I like about being an entrepreneur is you're kind of control your own destiny. You're your own boss. You can hire the people you need to do the things you're not good at, and if you're lucky, you get to exit and take some time off and then do something new, which is great. But it's not for everybody.
What's the most amount of money that you've ever made in a single year?
Let's say more than $1 million and less than 100 million.
That's a pretty big amount.
Yeah, it's not. I don't publicly talk about it.
Absolutely, totally. What's the best money lesson that you ever learned in your life?
Best lesson is that there's 2 ways to have more money. One is to make more and the other is to spend less. That's the best lesson.
That's so good. That's so true. If you could go back to when you were 20 years old and give yourself any piece of advice, what advice would you give to yourself?
Always look ahead to the future. Try to anticipate what changes are going to come about. That's how successful you could be. I'm actually a physician, so I've been practicing 20 years in internal medicine. So if you could really foresee what's going to happen in the future, that's the best gift you could have as a young person.
What's the best money lesson that you learned that you would like to pass on to the younger generation?
Best money lesson is to really minimize your overhead, no matter what it is. Even if you don't own a business and you're looking about your rent, your car payments, etc. Just really make a list of what your overhead is and budget yourself week by week or month by month. It is better in general to try to make as much as you can, and this is a Warren Buffett type of situation where he says, whatever you do for a living, just try to maximize what you could gross and bring in, but really minimize your overhead.
What's the blueprint to becoming a millionaire in today's world?
It's very, very simple plan. Skyscrapers, houses are not built from the roof down, they're built from the foundation up. So you have to establish a strong foundation. Get your basics down. Whatever you do for a living, you have to get your basics. Your knowledge will make you successful, and just keep building and building on it. And be cautious, like I said. Don't jump to the next level when your overhead is high, etc. Make sure you're in a situation where if you get it hit back, you're going to jump up again and go forward and go on to the next level.
If you could go back and give yourself any piece of advice when you were 20 years old, what piece of advice would you give yourself?
Listen to your heart. Listen to your heart. Go for what you really believe in at that point. You'll never get a second chance. You don't get that time back. Probably take the risk. Do something different.
Take the risk, guys.
Yeah.
What industry did you ultimately pursue a career in, and how did you know that you wanted to do that?
So I started in education. Now I've moved to corporate. I think you just go with what your gut feels, and maybe there's pressure at that time from the environment where you need to go and what you need to do. And also just kind of the jobs you'd be thinking about doing today don't even exist in 10 or 15 years' time. And we've seen that, right?
What's the most amount of money that you've ever made in a single year working in the commercial space?
Well, I come from South Africa, right? So it might be a little different. Probably about 1.8 million rand, which equates to about $200,000.
Wow, that's incredible. What's the best money lesson that you ever learned that you want to pass on to the younger generation?
I think invest even the smallest amount possible. Start early.
Yeah, absolutely. So how old are you?
23.
If you could go back to when you were 17 years old and give yourself any piece of advice, what advice would you give yourself?
Fuck, bro, just keep going. Never stop hustling. Keep going. Chase your dreams. And fuck what people say, you know?
And what do you do for a living?
I own a sneaker shop in Costa Rica. I retail sneakers. I do private shopping too. That's what I do.
So awesome. And how'd you get into that industry? You know, a lot of people coming out of high school, they don't know what they want to do in the real world. You know, how did you decide that you wanted to get into that industry?
Yeah, bro, I think it was YouTube, you know?
Yeah.
YouTube inspired me. I know Cool Kicks, all the sneaker shops that are big around now, and just content, you know?
What's the most amount of money you've ever made in a single year with your shoe store?
Shit. What's the most?
Yeah, the most.
Like 180K.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's good.
That's good, especially in Costa Rica too, because there's a lot less foot traffic there.
Yeah, you won't imagine, bro. There's big ballers down there.
Yeah, absolutely. If you could go back to when you were 20 years old, what advice would you give to yourself and why?
Don't be woke.
Don't be woke.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Number one. Number two, I would say work really hard and do your very best to succeed.
So what career or what industry did you ultimately pursue a career in? And how did you know that that's what you wanted to do?
My friend, what I have been learning is this. That's what the Bible says, the book of Proverbs. your gift gonna make room for you. Whatever you feel comfortable with, that you don't feel the burden to work with, that's your call. Everything that you can do for free, that pleases you, that's your call. If whatever you do your very best. Always try to excel, whatever you do.
What's the best money lesson that you've ever learned that you want to share with the youth?
I think one of the biggest lessons I can tell you is this. Money is easy, to come in and lose it. I have read many books, and they say if you want to make real serious money, one of the first lessons is to learn how to lose money. Because when you lose money, you are extremely careful on the next endeavor, And again, I think you have to excel, work really hard, nothing for free, wake up early, do your best, and God is gonna do the rest.
That's a wrap on today's video. Be sure to leave a like and a comment for new content coming soon. And you definitely want to click here or here to watch another video. See you guys in the next one. Peace.